the Creative Places. So this will
Sorry.
be our third year. Thanks, Suzanne. Third year in expanding this scheme. So we have 12 places already, and we're really excited to welcome new places into the family of Creative Places in 2023. So, but on there. Okay.
Recording.
Okay, and everyone just hop up, make sure they're on muted their microphones actually while we're recording. So just an agenda for today, we're going to go through the introduction into what is the Creative Places Award and priorities, guidelines, and just general advice on making applications if this is your first time making an application to the Arts Council. Some frequently asked questions, and then, like I said, we'll be talking to Muireann in Darndale, and we'll be talking to Marina about their experience on being awardees under this programme and what they've learned so far. And then we'll knock off the recording and we'll have a general chat and any questions you might have at that point. Okay, so I'm going to hop back into where this all came from. So the Creative Places is Arts Council strategy. It is a priority for the Arts Council now in terms of how we're reaching people and working and particularly investing in people and places, working with key local partners and uncovering each place, each location's key assets, resources and ambitions, and really unlocking the potential of places that have not really benefited from this sustained investment in the arts up to now. And we launched the whole Creative Places programme with a pilot in Tuam in January 2020, and I'm lucky to know what was ahead of us. And so Damien and Caroline are here from Creative Places Tuam, and can maybe speak to some of that a bit later as well, and their experience too. And later in 2020, towards the end of 2020, we had the opportunity to expand the programme through additional funding from government, and that has been fantastic to do that. So we now have more places. So we have Athy in Kildare, Bagnallstown and Carlow, Baltinglass and Wicklow, Darndale, and we'll hear from Muireann and Myrna, Edenderry and Offaly, Tipperary Town and the West Cork Islands, all are involved in 3-year programmes. Shannon, the Iver Peninsula, and Loughlinstown, Ballybrack and Macalima and Tala have been awarded research awards. So they're kind of in their developmental phase. And the whole aim is to invest in places that have had these fewer opportunities to take part in the arts, and that it is this kind of inclusive and diverse approach, and making sure that the approach is rooted in social engaged practice and very much embedded in community development principles, which is all around time, building relationships, and working with local people and what matters to them. And we really are looking at building on what's there will be cultural strengths in lots of these places, so it's building on those and really leading those communities to come forward with their ideas and for them to be the decision makers in these programs. So in the application, and if you're interested in making an application and you read the guidelines, there is a section that says, kind of what are the features of the successful Creative Places? And what we're looking to see come through the application and also through the programs as they're being implemented is a real knowledge and understanding of the people and the place being proposed. So what is this demographic profile? What is its social, cultural, and economic strengths? What are those challenges and what are those aspirations? So really knowing the profile of your place and making the case for the people who live in that place. Can you demonstrate, a lack of either arts infrastructure or a lack of that ongoing investment into a place? And that might come about through, maybe there's arts buildings already there, maybe there's projects, maybe there's festivals, maybe there's galleries, maybe there's arts organisations in the place, or maybe not, and most likely not, if there are places that you're thinking about, because usually these places bring with them investment. So what is the kind of the infrastructure of the place in your area, and how are the people that you're proposing to work with engaging with any infrastructure that might be there or not there? Can you demonstrate, that there is a lower than average public participation or attendance in arts activities in the place that you're talking about? And what evidence can you bring to that, your application? And can you provide evidence too in your application around, is there a higher than average number of people often experiencing barriers to the arts? And sometimes that might be, a place with a high demographic of older people, or a high demographic of people with disabilities, or maybe people from migrant backgrounds, or socioeconomic challenges in those areas. And have a very clear, understanding of the mission and the vision for what you want to achieve. The Irish version for Creative Places is Humus Counter, and Humus Counter poetically translates from Irish into English as the potential of a region. So really, we're looking at unlocking the potential of a place in this programme. So other features of a successful Creative Places award is about the understanding that the different perspectives and the different voices that need to be at the table in your project, and looking at for that diversity, not in voices but in the partnerships that you're building. So I'm going to come to this again later on, but in your partnership approach, you're really for a 3-year award, we're looking for about at least 5 partners involved there. So you'd have, the likes of the local authority is key. Are there community development organisations? Are there collectives? Who in your area is involved will be involved in this consortium to make this happen on the ground? And we're really looking to see, how do you connect with and energise the local artists and the creative skills that are existing in those areas, so that they can be part of the programme and have a voice and be part in delivery and the ongoing legacy of that programme as well. We really need to see that kind of understanding, that deep understanding that this takes time. So the 3-year award is, as Maureen will be talking about, is taking time. It takes time to build this, and it need that time to build those relationships. And also to consider the future sustainability of the project as well. So right from the beginning of the award, you're almost thinking at the end. So how are we, what is the ultimate outcome, and how can we start beginning to achieve this from the very outset? We're looking to see that kind of demonstrate that ability to build those relationships, to build capacity on the ground from the beginning, that you've got a strong communication plan, that you can that kind of feasibility in delivering it, but also documenting and evaluating and learning all the time as you go is a really important part, particularly of the 3-year awards. The opportunity allows for the engagement of an individual, so who will work with that people in place. So that kind of dedicated coordination role in a 3-year award, or that dedicated research personnel. So you should kind of, even we may not know who will be the coordinator in your application phase, you should have a good, strong idea who might be your research partners in a research phase. And also in that research phase, to really think about, what are your research questions? What do you want to know? What do you want to know that you don't know now about that place, and that you don't know now about how a programme like this might sustain? And Marina will talk a little bit about their experience of that shortly. Okay, so I'll move on to the priorities and guidelines and just general advice in making an application. And in the application and in the guidelines. So the guidelines will give you a lot of good information to help you make a very good application. So make sure you read those guidelines in detail. So you'll see in the guidelines there is particular priorities that we're looking for. So we're looking for that public engagement, that you understand the place, that you understand the demographic profile of the place, and that kind of bit I spoke about the infrastructure, and the different kind of demographic profiles, like older people or youth population in that area. We're looking to see that you have social engaged practice bedded in, that we can hear it in your application, and that you understand those principles and the community development principles in that application. And that community development partner that you might have in your application phase should be part of your application, and you should be able to hear their voice coming through there. Or priority there is on that research, that policy piece, that sustainability. So how are you going to make sure that this investment will have a legacy, and what are you learning as you go along in terms of making that investment sustainable into the future? Partnerships are really important, so strong consortium of local partners, You can have national partners in there too, that's fine. And if an arts organisation is a lead applicant, they don't necessarily have to be connected to the place, but their partners have to be connected to the place. Local authority arts office is key to this, and in terms of their knowledge of the people in place in that area, and the ongoing sustainability of the programme as well. What's important too is the kind of level of cash and in kind of, so you can apply for 25% of your overall costs can be support, is supporting funding, and 25% of that can be supporting kind. So just laid out there kind of an example of what that might look like. And we'll talk about what you can apply for now shortly in terms of the financial value of the awards. So it's in 2 different strands, and it is the Grace to Place Award is over 3 years, so that multi-annual piece, and it covers the appointment of Creative Places coordinator and a programme budget to match with it. The max you can apply for is 330,000 over the 3 years, and that being 90,000 in year 1, 115 in year 2, and 125 in year 3. That's the max. I mean, you don't necessarily, you may not need that, but that's the max you can apply for. And if you don't think you don't need to apply for it, because actually what we've discovered in recent years is that actually it takes a while to get the programme off the ground, which is why actually we've reduced the value of the award in year 1, because in every instance, actually the year 1 award wasn't being able to be maximised. And this allows us to kind of then work with more places by doing it in this kind of more efficient way. And we hope that in this year that we can make up to 4 awards under the 3-year programme. In the research and development phase, that's what you're applying for, this is a one-off award. And you can draw that down over 18 months. And it covers your research fees, it covers your consultation costs, and it may cover, you may include in there kind of an action research element as well, if there's a kind of a programmatic element that you're learning from as well. And the max you can apply for there is 35,000. Again, that means 75% of your costs. And in this year, we hope to award up to 3 of those awards as well this year. Okay, and then who can apply? So who can be the applicant? So the award, there's a number of different applicant types. So it can be open to local authority arts offices, including Allen na Gaeltachta. An arts organisation can be the lead applicant, a community development organisation can be the lead applicant. And that might be a family resource centre or a community organisation in the area. So for instance, if we look at our 8 3-year programmes at the minute, 4 are local authority led, 2 are arts organisation led, and 2 are community development led. If you are an arts organisation or community development organisation, we're looking for the arts organisation to have social engaged expertise embedded in to that organisation, and we're also looking for both of those organisations to be a CLG as well. Just the level of funding that is involved there that's the requirement. An organisation has to be the lead applicant. It's not an individual for an individual, but individuals are welcome to be part of that consortium. So certainly, if you're here as an individual, think about who you might be partnering with or working with on an organisational basis as the lead applicant. We are interested in looking at places. So one of the questions that actually comes up is actually there's been some investment in our place recently in terms of public realm development, and in terms of capital or capital infrastructure. So this is a people and place focused application. So there may be regeneration already happening in the place you're thinking about. So this is there to complement that regeneration element as well. Okay, so I'm going to move on in then making an application and kind of common pitfalls and general advice in how you might approach this. And these are, I suppose, common to lots of our funding clinics. So leaving it too late and missing the deadline will make you ineligible. So don't leave it too late to start your applications. This is why we're talking about this now at the end of January, when the closing date is the 30th of March. We're giving you 8 weeks to really think about making your application, building your partnerships, and working on your application and giving it good time. Not uploading all supporting material, so do check the guidelines. The guidelines are key. They will tell you what you must also upload as part of your application to give your application more evidence. And some of those are mandatory. So just make sure that you're uploading all the mandatory documentation that you need to do with your application. And there'll be different documents for the different strands. Always read the current guidelines, because we may update them and tweak them a little bit. So always look at the most recent ones that are attached to the application itself, and really look at the objectives of the award and make sure that you're writing with those objectives in mind, or you're thinking about them and embedding those objectives into your responses. When you get to upload, give yourself plenty of time to do this, and ideally submit, 2 days in advance if you can, or begin the upload 2 days in advance. Because especially if it's something that you're coming at for the first time, you may come across issues along the way, and so that we have time to support you in getting the application through. Always be aware that several people will be involved in reading your application in detail. So make sure that it's concise, it's clear, it's unambiguous, and it's compelling, that you're really strongly telling the story, and that we feel that kind of passion for your place coming through as well. Again, clear and concise information all the way through. And don't necessarily assume that we know your place or we know your work, and just make sure you give us as much information as possible as well. Make sure you're clear on why you're doing this and why you're proposing to work with people and places, and this place that you're thinking about, and make it clear. So if there is a policy consideration on your side, what are those? Can you back it up with other local policy and strategy in relation to that place as well? If you have support in kind, make sure that it's evidenced in your applications. That might be letters of support, so make sure that they're attached as well as part of that supporting documentation. And always, again, go back to the award's priorities and objectives, and in reading back on your application, make sure that you're doing that. And always a good idea to have someone else have read through it before you submit. Sometimes if you've been working on something for a little while, it's hard to see the wood for the trees. So getting a fresh pair of eyes on your application is always a good idea as well. Now, so the application, just technical information, the application window opens on the 28th of February. So you've got a month from now to start thinking about the partnerships, the conversations you need to have, those meetings you need to have, those relationships you need to build in advance, so that you're ready to start working on the application when the window opens then, and you've got a month then to work on the application. The closing date is 30th of March, is 5:30. Thursdays at 5:30. At 5:30 is always your Arts Council's deadline day. So 5:30 on the 30th of March is the deadline. There are supports there in making an application, in general supports in terms of frequently asked questions about using our online services system. So look on the website if you're not familiar with those. If you've got technical questions, there's email supports for those as well, or call our reception desk. The guys there are really good at handling those technical questions. And if you've any query from us over the next 8 weeks in terms of making application, that's myself, Suzanne, and Emer's emails there for getting in touch with us over the next few weeks. And there's also some YouTube guidance on how you make an application as well on that link in the Arts Council as well. So just, again, that's a new process for you. There is lots of supports there to help you. And I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions, and we'll populate our page with these later on as the window opens, and there may be more that arise from today that we'll add to this as well. So some of these I've covered off, but just to kind of give you more, just go over these again. If you're an individual, can you apply for award? That's a no. You have to be an organisation to apply, but you can be an individual part of that group. How many partners are required? So for a 3-year award, it would be saying, look, probably about 5 different partners would be a good mix, a good range of local authority, community development, and arts partners involved in your application, so that you're building a team locally to make this happen. From a research perspective, 2 or 3 3 policy would be good from a research perspective because you're in a slightly different phase, and you can be building your partnerships then through your research phase. The start date for proposals, so when you expect to start the program if you are awarded, as soon as you get your award letter, you can hit the ground running, and that is totally fine. So the award letters will probably issue around June this year, so it's halfway through the year. Our funding is a calendar cycle, not a it's a kind of January to December cycle. So we look, if you're an award applicant, we will, or successful applicant, we will be communicating to you how to draw down the funding in that sense. But we will think of your development phase as June to June, if you like. And if your application was unsuccessful previously, can you submit again? Yes, you can. So anyone who does submit an application and is not successful in a previous round, we do give everyone very good feedback, and we take a lot of time and care in that feedback as well, so that it'll help you, really think carefully about your approach and what you might need to look at again in terms of making the next stab at this. If you've been successful already in an award, can you apply again, and for a different location? And the answer is yes, there's nothing to stop you doing that. And we will also, most of you will be aware that the Arts Council has launched its spatial policy. So that's something that we will be bearing in mind in terms of locations of places. Of course, I mean, that is also dependent on where applications come from. So if we actually, the minute we look at if we looked at a map of creative places in Ireland, there's a strong cluster in Leinster, and in terms of north and northwest, there isn't any. So I mean, that's something that we will think about, but it doesn't preclude you from making an application. And can you make an application to both Strand 1 and Strand 2 of the Creative Places Award? We would say probably advise you not to, though it doesn't say in the guidelines that you can't, but not for the same place. But if you're part of 2 different consortiums for 2 different places, potentially you could do that. But there's a little bit of kind of might be spreading yourself too thin across two places like that. So just think about that yourselves, whether what is the best strategic decision for you in terms of where you're investing in. So we are now going to move on to talk to Darndale and to Eva. So I'm going to stop the slide share and we'll go to questions at the end of this. So just bear with me, I'll knock that screen down. I kind of scooshed to that pretty quickly, actually, quicker than I maybe. And if I rattle through quickly and you've got questions, please do come back to me after this. But I might hop over now to Muireann in Darndale, and you talk to us about your 3-year award and how you're getting on.
Well, Muireann, I don't know, you're in a cafe. I was going to say a few words and I might actually then pass you over to Muireann, if you're okay. So Muireann's the project manager and I'm the artistic coordinator. So we sort of share roles.
Yeah, sorry.
Together. Are you okay?
I'm just conscious that it's a bit noisy. Hi, everyone, by the way. So I don't want to be, especially that it's being recorded, it's just there's a lot of interference. But you jump way in and
then I will hand over to you, because actually Muireann was key for the application process. I mean, she did a huge amount of work on it, and lots of research and lots of things. So I mean, actually, if you're talking about the application, I actually think you should talk, Muireann. And then I can talk about how we together developed the program and when we got the award, the stuff that we did.
I'll try and keep it somewhat brief, and I'd also like to say that everyone can come on and get in touch with us if they have more questions. But yeah, so the application, we went for the full award, or the 3-year award, for Darndale, and our lead applicant really was Sphere 17, a youth facility in the D17 area. So really strategic, an amazing partner for us. They already had a great history of engaging in arts and culture and using it as a tool, I suppose, in their own day-to-day work. So we started there, and I'd say we ended up, we partnered with DCC, who were a huge support in this and still are to this day. And we everyone was so forthcoming. It was amazing the enthusiasm that we were met with in the area when embarking on the applications. We went out and kind of through a snowball kind of process, spoke to various service providers or local organizations and individual artists from the area and beyond, and all came together. I'd say there was kind of 17 of us in the end. Not to say that there needs to be that many, but it was just went to show, I suppose, the appetite for a project like this in the area. And it made our jobs very easy, to be honest, and a really enjoyable process writing the application. I don't really know what else. Anything else specific, I suppose, on that. That's basically
I mean, we used
how
the Nolan report. There had been a report, the Nolan report, and that really.
I mean, and Darndale, it did. Darndale had been, I suppose, highlighted as a strategic area for DCC as well. So there was a lot of activity going on, and then this was an amazing opportunity to ensure like arts and creativity were part of all that really important work that was going to be done as well. So it was very good timing for us in many ways, but all of that research, a great body of research done by Dr. Doc Nolan, who's now part of our stakeholder groups and steering groups. And it goes, those partners that we worked on the application with, we then went on when we were awarded and we started working on the project to form a steering and stakeholder group, which we have just found invaluable. So these partners have stayed along with us throughout the entire process and kind of, you know, they're there to help steer, guide and inform the project as it unfolds. And they're always there as an amazing resource in connecting into the community and Darndale and its surrounding area. So I don't know, they've like our application, our same people from day one are still with us kind of to this day, helping to shape Creative Places Darndale as it unfolds. Anyone you want to add to that?
On that stakeholder group, so I mean, we met lots of people and local residents, and so on the stakeholder group we have, you know, individuals as well, so residents, local artists. We got lots of letters of support from artists who were living in the area, and like it was a huge body of, and yeah, there was a wonderful sense of support. And actually everybody was saying, you're not just here and you're going to fly in and then fly out. So we were like, no, I promise you we're here to stay. Like we're here, we've a good 3 years and our mission is legacy, legacy, legacy. So that was, you know, as is the brief of Creative Places was always at the forefront of our mind. And as I said, Muireann was absolutely key. She did all the legwork on the application, and wow, amazing. And so we were delighted when we got it because she had put so much work into it. And then as soon as we got the money, we went even deeper into the area, you could say. So we were on the ground all the time, and that's key. And we really met people, and we used art to encounter people. So we did lots of pop-up stuff, and we spoke to people and what they thought was important and learned about the area. So we were on the ground a lot. And, you know, I think anyone would tell you that that's absolutely the most important thing. And so our program was led by ideas from the community. And we didn't have any problem spending our money. we were like more. So Muireann's like was great at, she also got lots of great income for us because we did develop a festival which happened at the end of year one. And that's the video we're going to show you, we're going to show you a kind of culmination of year one. So we were very ambitious, but I also think it's because Darndale had, you know, it's like it's even in the newspapers now for the, you know, some of the awful things. There's great people there, there's real talent there. But on a national level, it had such a bad reputation that and speaking to people, they're proud of their area, but also aware of that it's, you know, nationwide is bad. So we sort of wanted to be key in sort of altering perceptions of the area. So I don't know, we showed the video. So anyway, we developed what was called the Made in Darndale Festival, and that was the culmination of year one. Roll it there, Colette.
Are we showing that now, Sinead, or later? Because there's just a couple of things on that, I suppose, that I know you mentioned in the start, that like that time investment is a huge major piece of getting to know people and like really kind of digging deep into the area, which we spent a lot of time doing. But we're in a kind of programmed this amazing research series in, if we got it in June 21, I think we started straight into it in about late July, August, so a series of engagements and using the arts to actually research and engage with folks in the area and what they responded to and seeing what may inform the following year's program. And there's so many incredible projects. Marina, as she mentioned, there's the festival, which is kind of a culmination of all the rolling projects that happened over a given year. And like there's a new choir, the Voice of Darndale Choir set up. There's, you know, there's the activity in the men's sheds, there's the workshops in the schools. There's so many different strands of programming and activity and engagement that come together in this festival. So we'll show you a bit about it in a while, because I'll probably say
Oh, I
a lot
beg your pardon. I
more.
thought
No worries. I think, Sinead, did you say at the end?
No, go for it
Go for it
now, 'cause I
now.
think
Yeah,
that's
it's going to be
why
way,
it's
it's going to be way
Talk
more
about it
interesting than us
afterwards, yeah,
talking. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll share it now. Bear with me. Let me know.
I think that Darndale is a huge untapped resource of talent, of art, of creativity.
I've stopped thinking about communities as being disadvantaged and think of them more as being underestimated.
Creative Places Darndale is a 3-year Arts Council funded project, and basically the purpose of it here is to weave a culture of the arts into everyday life in Darndale.
So the project seeks to support arts practice that is in the area and to involve all the community in arts practice. So we're doing lots of workshops, we're doing performances, and as part of the community engagement, we really talk to people about what kind of arts they're interested in, what kind of art forms, what they enjoy doing, what's important to them, and you know, about their everyday life and things like that. And from that, I made a sort of arts plan.
In order to develop a legacy, you're going to have to, you know, team up and be in partnership with the people who live here, and to be very aware of, you know, what interests them, like what they want. So obviously one of the great ways in to any community is to pay attention to the children in the community, and that's been a very big part of the programme.
At the beginning, we sort of did research. We did lots of pop-up performances and workshops, literally sort of last minute, on the streets, in the squares, at people's doorsteps, and there was great response to that. And then we started building workshops that were sort of set. And so we were with Sphere 17, who are one of our main stakeholder, you could say, and with the schools.
A lot of rolling projects where young people of all ages are either building upon or gaining new skills in the areas of circus, music, songwriting, video making.
We had the children record a song that they've come up with about Darndale and about the area and about living here, the good points and the bad points, and their hopes for their future.
So like, I suppose the song is about like kind of pride of place, I guess. So it's great seeing all the kids in their area doing their thing in their own, you know, school and community centres and stuff like that, and just enjoying being where they're from.
So this song, I think, is I suppose an expression of what it feels like to be and live in Darndale, and what it's like to be just a kid.
Making these kids aware of this option, that there's something else, because when you discover creativity, it's like a different world, it's like a portal.
I think people are forced to leave where they live to go and pursue their art, because you might not think that there's people in the area who are interested in art and who are interested in acting, whatever it is that you're interested in, but they are out there.
Seeing people directing a music video or producing a song or writing a song or whatever it is, and going, oh, that can be my job someday. I think it just opens up creativity, and then it opens up what the world is for you. And
we've had lots of contact with lots of other service users and providers, and I mean, all of that goes towards kind of the content for the festival. We hooked up with Chrissy Ward, who's a local traveller woman, and she writes mystical poetry and children's stories, and we're in the process of applying for a grant to develop her stories and perhaps into an audiobook or printed material. And we have her at our storytelling events. We're working with John Connors, he's the ringmaster of the Dare to be Darndale Carnival Cabaret. We're doing history walkabout and history and storytelling events. And we have the Voice of Darndale Choir, and we're in collaboration with the Fween Spare Festival, which is happening in Artane. Really lots of things to
include people young and old.
And then I suppose our flagship piece of programming for year one, which really is a culmination of the last 6 months' work, with all of those various pieces, is coming together in this 4-day festival, the Made in Darndale Festival, which is really a celebration of place and the community here.
It's about looking at your community anew and showing it to other people. It's a sense of showing it off. Look, this is a great place. I want you to see it at its best, and I want you to know about the community. And it's about just having people being near each other, feeling connected and feeling proud about your place and what it can do.
I think it'll bring a smile on everyone's face. I think everybody needs a bit of happiness, a smile, and something, to be joyful for, to be saying, look, I live here, I live in Darndale, and not to be ashamed of it.
You could learn a lot from the people in Darndale, because once you're known there, you're part of the community. And if every community took on the same mentality as seeing a person for a person, they would be doing well.
We're really enjoying it at the moment. It's great fun, even though I can't sing, but it's fun and it brings people together.
Yeah, I think it's real therapeutic. I think it's just, like, relaxing in a sort of way. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was fun because I had all my friends there.
You know, the hospitality that's been shown to us, the welcome, the everything, the enthusiasm, the energy for this kind of project has been mind-boggling. It's brilliant. So it's great to be a part of it.
The attendance, the feedback, it's all been amazing. And there's so much stuff for the kids to do, and they're all getting stuck in. And it's a beautiful thing that's happening here.
I genuinely believe that it could cause a ripple effect throughout the community. I think it's going to make some waves.
I'm very ambitious that this will grow and grow and grow, and that we'll make something really special.
That's our year one.
Yeah.
Guys, that was amazing to see. As for some, I saw that. So that is fantastic. The joy, that is absolutely palpable. Coming through that. So it's brilliant.
Thank you. I mean, we were very proud of it, and I mean, we did come up against it. There were quite a few people at first and said, a big top tent in Darndale Park, you'll never get away with it. So we went for it. And actually it was a massive symbol of, it was so important. It was like a piece of art itself, actually. When you saw me wearing them myself jump, that was the first time we actually saw the big top up in the park. We ran like children towards it. So we are doing that again. And so after that, and I think as a result of that, the local authority decided that they had stopped. They used to do fireworks and a few things for the area in Halloween, but they decided that they would put on a Halloween festival, and we curated it for them. We produced it for them, actually, and we applied for the Arts Office have an outdoor performance scheme, so we got money for that, and we gave our time and our expertise in kind to it, and so we formed a really close link with Darndale Together, who are the local authority, and that's kind of a part of the IOG, which is the implementation group. So we're forming deeper links with more and more and more, with the idea that we're going to set up a festival committee so that when we're gone, we'll have other avenues. We'll be on to you again but that, the festival will have a legacy, and they're into it. So we do have a lot of, I'm kind of aware it's quite an ambitious program. We've set up an artists collective, and there's a local Ella Clark who's looking after that, and that's just to give supports to artists in the area, and that could be just networking and also with applications and things like that. And we have a small bursary for artists that we're launching shortly. The choir is up and running, and we have a link with Irish National Opera in the sense that Maeve Brereton Hurley, who's on the mentorship conducting course with them, is our choir mistress. So it's lovely, and they sang at the Mansion House at Christmas, and they've been invited to perform the Dublin International Choral Festival. So we've got seed money to set up a youth theatre company that actually we're looking for partners to set that up. And we're always on the lookout for more grants and things like that. And Darndale, as a result of the work we're doing, has been awarded the first pilot scheme of, it's called Citizens Commissioners by Dublin City Council Arts Office, which is, so we're kind of helping roll that out, which is another process of aiding citizens to make choices about public art commissions. So which will lead to, a commission in the area that will be people-led. So we're busy.
That is all fantastic, and a real reminder, Myrna and Muireann, that those of us who do work in the arts, that and as hard as it can be, most of the time, that it's about bringing joy to people. If we remind ourselves of that more often, those ripple effects that you talk about will absolutely happen. And myself and Tony and Damon were talking about ripple effects yesterday in relation to creative places, so it's great to see you talk about that too. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Marina now from who is beaming in all the way from Kerry and in the beautiful Iveragh Peninsula. So Marina, hello, welcome.
Hello, how are you? That's fantastic, that video from Darndale. It's amazing. Really well done to everybody.
Just a reminder to keep the microphones, brilliant.
Are you, can everybody hear me?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, well, before I start, I suppose I'll say that Iveragh, where the Cumas Counter research project is happening at the moment, where it's located is in southwest Kerry. It lies between the Beara Peninsula to the south and the Dingle Peninsula to the north. So its landmass is punctuated by the sharp triangles of the Skellig Rock. That's probably the iconic image of the area. So it's a very pristine area, very beautiful. It's a dark sky reserve, and there's loads of surfable beaches. So it has a strong tourist season from June to August. But for the people who live there year round, it's an area of rural disadvantage marked by aging demographic, draining depopulation, closed up businesses, withdrawal of public and social services, and all of the associated social and economic consequences of that. So Iveragh is also the most vulnerable Gaeltacht area in Ireland, with the traditional Irish-speaking townlands bearing the brunt of the most extreme population decline. So that's the part of the country that we're dealing with. It's the exact opposite of Darndale. There's no people, and the demographic is very old. So I'm going to speak for a few moments about the decision made in Iveragh to apply for the research and development stream of Creative Places funding, and to discuss some of the insights and outcomes of that process. So the decision to apply for the R&D stream was taken before I took up my role as researcher, but I understand from discussions with the steering group that it came about as a result of a conversation that happened between some local people and members of the Arts Council who were in the area during the Armageddon Solstice Poetry Gathering in the autumn of 2020. So the Creative Places Tuam programme had begun earlier that year, but there wasn't yet widespread awareness of what was happening in Tuam, and there was no sense of how it might be relevant to the situation at that time in South Kerry. But having been pointed in the direction of the Creative Places project, a group of people, local people, arts activists, social organisers, people in community development, community workers, arts officers, came together to look at the what, the when, the where, and the why of the scheme and of the application process. So this group shared a baseline understanding of the potential of art to operate as a catalyst in generating small, incremental moments of social change. And this was their motivation to persevere, and this was the why of making an application to the fund. So the where and the when were also self-evident, but the what was the snag. What would they actually do if they got the money? What type of projects might be funded? Which artists or groups might be interested in participating, and to what communally negotiated end? How might a curated program of socially engaged art speak to the social and the socio-economic and linguistic patterns that were distinct to this area? So there was just not enough information available to allow for an evaluation of the ways in which a 3-year investment in socially engaged art projects might substantively impact on the quality of life in Yves Rothach. So on this basis, the steering group concluded that they were not in a position to make an application for the full Creative Places designation, and rather the opportunity to apply for the Research and Development Award would be more useful and more relevant. So when the research and development work began here in January 22, it was suggested to me that there had been so many previous research projects in this area that it was likely that many people might be suffering from research fatigue, and along with the ancillary skepticism that any of it may help change anything. So, and I think it's fair to say that while I did find a widespread disinclination towards optimism, I also found that the people who remain committed to making a life in Yves Rothach are not defeated. There is a strong sense of place. Place making, I came to understand over the year, happens in the repositories of shared communal experiences across times, but anchored in specific locations in the landscape. So football is obviously a very important element in this form of placemaking in Yves Rothach. But people also speak about the tug-of-war competitions that used to happen in Killeen or the spontaneous summer music sessions in Mannix Point Caravan Park, or the stories heard in Irish for the last time in Kilreelig, the street party in Ballinaskellig on Independence Day of Ukraine, the touring Tops of the Town nights that went to every parish and brought everybody out, or the Caherdaniel River Eco Project that almost got off the ground. The recordings that were found in a Glenmore attic of tunes that hadn't been heard in a century, and the art and craft of river poaching in Owen in Chevuy, the collaborative film that was made online during COVID, or the 1950s feis on the back of a lorry in Drummond. This was a bricolage of remembered events and experiences which formed the bedrock of a distinct community culture in this particular place. The stories related in one-on-one conversations, a methodology which was pursued throughout the research year, would also allow time and space to think about what people miss now in their community and cultural life. Sometimes people would speak about what they would love to see happen, what they really missed for their lives from their social lives. And then we begin to speak about what we, or what, if anything, we might be able to do together to bring about some of these ideas that are fermenting in people's minds. So for much of this process, we had no funding to offer, and this was actually a great advantage. There were a lot of problems and a lot of misunderstandings that were completely avoided. So instead, we could give time to help articulate and to develop ideas when they presented, to point towards funding sources, to help fill forms, to make connections, to build networks between different groups and people and artists. And in this way, we managed to get a good few small projects off the ground. On each occasion, we applied participatory action research methods. So the participants and the artists were involved in the activity, but also in an interpretation and an awareness of the predispositions which determine the ways in which the activities happen, and of the wider context in which the activities take place. At this point, I can say that we could have used the research year to prepare a strong application for the next Creative Places funding round. So that approach may well be the best option for some locations, and there is a lot to be said for it, no doubt. In our case, the primary research question always allowed for the possibility that the 3-year fund to support socially engaged art projects may not be the answer. So by approaching the work in this way, we were able to gain a good understanding of the historical spaces where things fell, where where things were forgotten or were lost or didn't happen, the failed spaces, which continued to fuel ideological inclinations and make it difficult to envisage alternative ways of living. It allows us a good understanding, a good appreciation of why, for some people in Ivreach, it's almost impossible now to imagine what a flourishing arts community might look like. So what do we know now that we didn't know a year ago? So on a practical level, we'll know that there is an established need for a cultural pivot in this area, a centre or an institution or an inclusive arts festival or even a person who is assigned to the task of supporting, building, tending to growing a cohesive art and artistic community across the peninsula. Because in the stark absence of such a curatorial role, arts culture here is fragmented, it's individualized, it's aimless, and it feels like it's in perpetual decline. So on an emotional level, we know that in this place where optimism and confidence has become so depleted, that any arts intervention will firstly need to acknowledge and celebrate the real significance of small wins. I see Kate Kennelly is on the call, and she speaks a lot about small wins. That's small steps, small audiences, small astonishments, but more and more of them, organized by local groups happening maybe in new places, involving new people, new genres, new art forms, new ways of participating. We know now that a wide range of small-scale opportunities for people to enjoy being social and being creative together will be the first step for rebuilding this area as a creative place. We just recently opened a micro arts fund to begin to encourage and support such projects. So we will use this as an opportunity to engage with as many community groups and socially minded artists from the area as we can. Now, the idea for this micro arts fund was shared to us by Caroline and the Tuam Creative Places people. So through engaging with this network, we can say that we now know a great deal more about socially engaged practice than we did a year ago. And we now know that there's a great deal of solidarity and practical support being offered by Tuam Creative Places and in the connections forged between the coordinators of the other creative places. So we have also identified the gaps in traditional arts provision and infrastructure. So there are no exhibition spaces, amateur theatre practice doesn't happen. Their access to training in singing or dance or art is very limited. Access to a bold, unabashed Irish language programming across the arts forms doesn't happen at all. There's functioning links with national touring theatre and music companies aren't being forged. The basic essential arts services, which are currently sporadic, are entirely absent. So with someone still remaining in our research period, we can say with certainty that we don't have all the answers, but we have some answers and we do have better questions. We're in a stronger position to anticipate where a significant investment in the arts in this area may make most impact to the benefit of most people. We have covered some of the groundwork which might otherwise need to be undertaken during the first year of a full Creative Places investment. So the research and development programme in Ivreach has been very useful, very valuable in and of itself. So now we look forward to building on it in the years ahead. Sinead.
Thank you, Marina. Wow, that was a really honest reflection of what the, you know, I hate the word journey, but the journey you kind of have been on with your partners, and taking a real deep dive, you know, into your place. I think that's been really, really refreshingly honest, and brilliant to hear. And I'd love to get a copy of that paper. I mean, I think there's a blog in there somewhere that I think would be really useful to share more broadly. So we might have that conversation with you a little bit later on, Marina, on that one, if you're willing to share it. I'm going to open up to questions shortly, so keep recording there for a minute, Suzanne. But I'm keen to kind of maybe pick up on a couple of things myself, and one that I actually realised I didn't talk about properly in the first place, in the first instance, in terms of making a 3-year award, and just in terms of hearing back what Muireann and Werner were saying in Darndale, is that we don't expect in the application phase for you to have a programme mapped out. In fact, we don't want to see a programme mapped out, because that means that, you know, the whole opportunity is to engage locally, to hear local voices, and for them to be informed and be the decision makers on what a local programme might look like. So if you're thinking about that in terms of making a 3-year application, for the 3-year award, is not to be thinking about the programme. It's thinking about the partnerships, thinking about your approach, and thinking about the outcomes of what you want to achieve. The programme can come later. That's not what we're assessing you on. Before we open the floor, I'm also going to bring into the conversation, if I can, Damien and Caroline. So Damien McGlynn, who is the new director of Create, and I should say new, is the director of Create, and Caroline Courtney, who is a coordinator in Creative Places Tuam, who are now entering year 4 in Tuam, and moving into that legacy phase. And there is so much we can learn from that as well as they move forward. And also that those who are part of the Creative Places programme at the moment, we have a network. So there's a network of all our Creative Places, and that's being managed by Damien. So if you end up being a successful applicant in 2023, you're also part of this network of peer support as well that Marina alluded to as well. So Caroline, I might ask you first actually, in terms of, I did see you there. You are there, aren't you? Oh, I see you. Yes, hi there. In terms of, you know, what have been some of the critical learnings, you know, of Creative Places Tuam, that would be really useful for potential applicants to think about now, and is concise a way that you can bundle together as possible?
It's a big question.
I know. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I think it's really striking that obviously each place is different, and the needs of each place will be determined by the partners and the work that's done, but also like listening to Darndale and Iveragh, the similarities of place, especially a place that's been underfunded, the idea that the deep listening needs to happen, that you need to pace with time accordingly, especially, you know, in terms of a community that hasn't been strategically funded or invested in over a long period of time. If people have been operating on that voluntary piece by piece kind of approach, where they're Tuam has a great saying that it's a DIY town, it's a do-it-yourself town. So then when you come with resources and say we can support that, we can lend thinking to that, we have funding for that, that's quite a jolt from the scrappy going up against something to then being told, you know, well, what do you need, or being asked what do you need. So I'd say that the critical learning is that this work is cyclical, that people will engage with it, that life will happen and they'll have to step out, but you need to be consistent in the offering of re-engagement, that if you don't, you know, that things will land at different times for different people. People will need to step out, and especially if you're thinking about you know, activating local leadership, that you need to be flexible in that. So that was one of the really key things of emerging into place, you know, in January 2020, and then COVID happening. You know, we were emerging or establishing a steering group. Life really hit hard in that time. People had to step back. So you have to, we had to hold space for people to step out, because, you know, people were fighting fires, but then people stepped back in. So time as a resource has been really key. The consistent offering of engagement. Sometimes you have to lead by doing, and that you have to step out of what I found really hard in that pandemic phase was everything seemed to be quite cerebral. We were talking about work because we were working remotely, and people couldn't meet. So people were working independently or individually or working online. So it was very mind heavy, is what I would say. But then when we were able to get back together and activate, it was really amazing to see that happening. But we had to start doing and showing and letting things happen so people could see what it is we'd been talking about all of that time. what we mean by when we talk about working together, about socially engaged work, about collaboration, the difference between collaboration and participation, and the value around it all. So that's been really key for me as being the person on the ground, is what I would say, in that learning. So what I would say is as well is that the idea of how we co-own the space and the town and the different needs of people. So if you're an artist and a resident and a parent and a carer of a person, you wear many hats at many different times. So we were looking at how the programme can live in the area of Tuam and then the hinterlands, where people can be actively engaged and lead on it, can be a participant in it, but also that they can positively encounter it during their day-to-day. So it's not an all in or nothing, it's a series of invitations all of the time. So that's kind of something that's been really unfolding for us.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Caroline. It's great to get that nutshelled in a way. And I know that was a big question I did ask, because there's a whole thesis really in terms of the critical learnings at Tuam. I mind trying to spotlight you on that one. Damien, I might pop to you then as well before we kind of open up to some questions coming there in the chat. In terms of, if you were to look at, for potential applicants coming in, I know Caroline covered off some of them there, but top 3 things to think about at this point, with 8 weeks to go to that application deadline.
Yeah, I think it's tough because, as we've said, it's a big ask, and there's so much you could throw at an application like this. But I think even your tip earlier of just trying to really articulate the passion and the unique kind of characteristics of the place, I think that's really important. The things that I thought were maybe the most important items to think about in this stage when you're drafting an application or beginning those conversations have mostly been mentioned by people through this conversation. So I'm glad we're all in agreement. But the first one for me has always been the sustainability. So we're talking about a long-term project. If you're looking at 3-year program, this is longer than a lot of other funded programs that we will see in local places. So the 3 years is great, but from the very beginning, writing the application, you've got to be thinking about the long term and what sustains that, and how you're building capacity locally from the get-go, that you're thinking about how is this going to be continued and held and looked after and supported by whoever. And it could be the consortium of partners that you bring together to be part of this bid. You're thinking about the roles that they may have subsequently, but again, that'll be different in every place how you think about sustaining this. But nobody wants to have a kind of a cliff edge after 3 years of great engagement and activity to not have a plan. So I think that has to be really clear to you going into it. I think that is just kind of a responsible way to put it together. And then connected to that, the second thing, I think the partnership is really important. So it's something you see a lot with different funding programs, especially if there's a requirement to have partners, that people run around kind of last minute just trying to rope people in to get their name on the form. That never works out well in practice. So you really have to think about what are the kind of particular skills and expertise that they're bringing, but also be really clear about what their commitment is. So you don't want this kind of passive partner that doesn't really understand it, isn't really contributing. You've got to set that out with them and set it out in the application. You know, what's their role? What are they bringing? Is it a purely advisory role? Are they taking on elements of the program? How is that going to be managed, and what's the governance sort of around that during the 3 years and beyond? So just be really clear, I guess, about the role of each of the partners and what they bring. And then the last thing I thought was around context. And we talked a bit about this, those of you who were at the event that we did in Tuam in November. And it's really just that thing that we've talked about a few times here about how unique each of these places are. And I think we have to be careful not to kind of drop in the kind of cookie cutter template into a place and say, well, we think this is how these kind of projects work. It's really important to be true to the place and the character of the place. And I think the examples say in the video of Darndale, a lot of those ideas came through, that it's not something that would have happened somewhere else. It was very unique and personal to that place. And I think you need to sometimes take a lot of time to build that, both in the application phase and in the program. You've got to be sure that you know what it is that's unique about this place, not just that it has a need or it's been underserved, but what could come from it that is special about this place. And I think that's one of those things that if you've ever been on the other side of marking applications for something like this, you're looking for something that really sparks the excitement, that you think, wow, we really need to support this place and this project. And if it just sounds too generic, that you're thinking we're going to come in and we're going to do what we usually do, but in this place, it's not as compelling. So definitely think about the character and what makes your place stand out.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Damien. That they're 3 brilliant tips. I thought they would be important to include in the recorded element of this. So at this point, Suzanne, we might stop the recording and allow those questions to come through. And